something was from Brazil, by a woman called Ana Paula Oliveira, who is a human rights activist from Manguinhos favela in Rio de Janeiro. She lost a son to police violence in her favela, and has since worked as a human rights activist, kind of campaigning for the rights of favela populations. But we're going to hear a bit more about her later on, so I kind of don't want to go too much into that now.
Okay. And why do you think it's so important that this book was written now?
I think Voices, above all, it's a book of hope, and it's a book of optimism. And I think we're living at the moment in a time of widespread disillusionment. And I think the book is full of examples that show that kind of creative, dynamic, well-organized, committed social and political organization really can achieve positive results. And I think at the moment, in kind of such a negative and polarized political climate, that's really important to bear in mind.
Yay.
So on that note, what do you think is the future for social movements in Latin America?
I think social movements in Latin America have always been important, and I think they will continue to be important. I don't think that has changed. To give you an example today, look at Brazil. Unfortunately, and for various different reasons, which we won't go into now, they elected this awful president in October last year. But I think some of the reaction to that has been really positive. People haven't been cowed by it. People have organised. People have gone out to the streets. People have made it clear that they reject this. This individual, and also the whole kind of ideology that he espouses. And I think, in this kind of context where you have people like Bolsonaro coming to power, the role of social movements is, it's not just, it's not just kind of something interesting, it's vital, and it's more important than ever.
And what can we do to support the voices and the movements that are represented in this book?
So, I'd say get involved. So, if you read the book, go online, search for some of the people who we interviewed, learn more about their organizations. Lots of them are on social media, they have their own websites. Get in touch, contact the people, ask them how you can be involved, how you can help out. We'll be doing some of this on the Voices website as well, kind of connecting people in the UK and the English-speaking world with these movements, and make as well donations if possible too. This is kind of something that we'll be putting into action on the Voices website.
We also have a secondary arm for the Voices website and book. We're going to launch a podcast channel starting from next week, and there'll be 6 teaser podcasts that we're going to be releasing over a 6-week period, and we're also hoping to secure funding to make this a much longer running project that will not only represent voices within the book, but also from other emerging social movements and other leaders and activists as well. And you can buy, of course, the book. If you haven't got your copy, there's a bookstall over there where you can buy one. And next, I think, next we actually have some people who are going to be some actresses who will be reading extracts from the voices in the book.
Okay, so first up is Mariana Aristizabal, I hope I said that correctly.
Yeah.
We'll read the voice of Camila Mendez from the mining chapter.
Where should I read here?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, to give you a bit of context, Camila Mendez is an environmental activist from Cajamarca in Colombia, and she participated in a successful campaign to hold a consulta popular, kind of a local referendum, on the installation of a gold mine near her town by the South African mining company Anglo Gold Ashanti. This consulta popular was town voted near unanimously for the rejection of the gold mine. And so I think Anglo Gold Ashanti, which is one of the world's biggest mining companies, was forced to leave. So, you know, it was a massive victory for the local community. Anyway.
It came out in the press that one of the largest gold deposits in Latin America had been discovered in Cajamarca, Tolima, and that it was going to be exploited for the common good of our country. That was early in 2007, when it was announced publicly. But the company had already been present in the area for some time, in the guise of another company called Sociedad Quedada. It had been doing assessments, socioeconomic surveys, interviewing people, handing out questionnaires, exploring the whole area without asking permission. Once it became public knowledge, we found out that the company behind it was Anglo Gold Ashanti. When the company arrived, they were saying that they would provide jobs and bring development. Many people didn't know. They didn't understand what was happening. We had to hold so many events to provide information, to publicize what was happening, to understand and to inform others and understand what was happening in other areas. And that began to generate a level of consciousness among the people. It meant going door to door, farm to farm, person to person. We told them the date of the ballot and explained why they should vote, because people were very confused. We told them and we stressed the importance of it. The vote was to give guarantees to our children and grandchildren that they would be able to enjoy a healthy environment, land, food produced in Cajamarca, the rivers and ravines, the whole campesino culture. That's what we focus in these 2 weeks. It was a huge task, working with communities to encourage them to take part. On the 26th of March, we were finally able to hold our Consulta Popular. After so long, so much effort, the tension that day was indescribable. We were confident that we had done everything that could be done, but it still felt like anything could happen. A lot of police arrived and the atmosphere became very tense. Fortunately, the voting went off normally, without incidents, and the turnout was high. Then we waited for the results. For the consulta to be valid, 70% of the registered electorate had to vote. We needed 5,500 people to vote. To win, we needed a simple majority. You can imagine the tension we felt. When the result came in, 6,175 no votes were counted. Well, first of all, it was a relief to know that enough people had voted to make the consulta valid. Then, of those, 98% were for no to mining. That's when we started to celebrate. It had been 10 years of suffering, difficulties, accusations, threats. So that moment was the climax. It was on national and international news. And in the community, it was the satisfaction of knowing that we had held our Consulta Popular and we had said no to mining. After a while, the mayor started going around saying that here in Cajamarca, we're starving to death and lots of people had lost their jobs. And this was what was being reported nationally. We just carried with our work in agriculture because here it's an agricultural economy. Our main product is arracacha, which is a root vegetable like a carrot. Our municipality is the world leader in arracacha production. We also produce beans, coffee, bananas, and other fruit and vegetable. As the campesinos say, whatever you plant will grow, literally. So it was a lie, what the mayor was saying. It is true that a few remaining employees of the company ended up out of work, but in Cajamarca, there is employment on the land, and most of us carried on with our usual work in family agriculture. On 26th of November, 8 months after the consulta, we held an event in the park at which we distributed around 2,000 plates of sancocho, a traditional soup made with maize, plantain, potato, cassava, and meat, which we often eat in Colombia. Thanks to the solidarity of the campesinos, we cooked this sancocho to show the world, and specifically the mayor of Cajamarca, that we weren't starving. On the contrary, after 8 months, there was still plenty of food for everyone. It was a symbolic act to prove that the true wealth of our area, Cajamarca, is not gold, not a mine, but agriculture, which is what we want to work at. Cajamarca has become a beacon of hope. We faced down a lot of adversity. Many outsiders thought that we wouldn't succeed. There was a lot of tension. Once we had achieved it and shown that we, a campesino community, proud of who we are, but with limited resources, really could confront a monster, one of the world's biggest gold producers, that fills people with hope. Thank you.
I would now like to introduce Vecina Smith, who will read the voice of Patricia Mayorga from the chapter on new journalism in the Voices book. Patricia is a Mexican journalist who was forced into hiding following the murder of her friend and colleague Miroslava Birch. The two women had been exposing narco politics in the Mexican state of Chihuahua. Patricia went into temporary exile in Peru and was awarded the International Press Freedom Award in 2017.
I worked on the Heraldo de Chihuahua in the state capital. It was a daily newspaper, it still is. I only intended to work there for a year before going to university, but I ended up staying for 10 years. My contact with different kinds of people allowed me to learn more about the reality of the state of Chihuahua. It also gave me the opportunity to get involved in helping people. I became passionate about telling people stories. My first reports were about health, education, religion, and civil associations. That's where I cut my teeth. Then, around 2003, Gloria Trevi, a Mexican singer who had been arrested in Brazil, arrived in Chihuahua to stand trial. I was assigned to cover the story. For that case, I spent hours in court, and I began to investigate other stories too. I began to specialize in court reporting, and before I left Chihuahua, I was covering trials and hearings. That's how I got hooked on journalism. In 2010, I left El Heraldo and started working for another local media company called Omnia, a digital publication which also had a weekly printed version and TV news channel. So that was a big challenge, and I was assigned to cover governors' political campaigns. While this was going on, I noticed the level of violence and started meeting people involved in the so-called drug war. I was made head of information, and I had a team of very young reporters. In the beginning, we had quite a lot of freedom. My team were very enthusiastic, and we worked very well together. We reported human rights violations, disappearances, homicides, and feminicides. We covered La Sierra Tamahuara in particular, because in 2011 and 12, the level of violence began to increase and has continued to do so ever since. That's where we were working when they broke us up. In 2012, I started working from Proceso magazine as a correspondent. I worked for both outlets for a while, but soon I had to leave the local outlet because of the increasing pressure to me, so I could do so. I still work for the Proceso. What has had the biggest impact is our exposure of political candidates with links to drug trades. It has been life-changing for me, and it resulted in the murder of my colleague Miroslava Breach. At least one party, the Institutional Revolutionary Party, PRI, fielded candidates involved in criminal groups in 2016, which exposed that in our reports. In our respective publications, Proceso in my case, La Jornada in Miroslavas, we publish these reports, each in our own style. This led to the PRI changing at least 2 of their candidates, one of whom was for the municipality of Chinipas, located in the Sierra Tamaulipas. The candidate from Chinipas, who belonged to a criminal organization, got very angry, and they began to send threats and messages telling us not to publish these kind of stories. Miroslava Breach was killed on March 23 last year, 2017. She was from Chinipas. The messages came from people who knew her. They sent us messages over the course of a year. I saw 3 or 4 of them, but after Miroslava's death, I found out that they had sent her more. When she was killed, Javier Corral, the governor at the time, immediately provided me with security detail for 15 days that same morning. Eventually, I was persuaded to leave the country, and I've not come back to Chihuahua ever since. The Comité to Protect Journalists, CPJ, intervened when I didn't want to leave Chihuahua. When I had the security details, I didn't want to leave. They got involved in investigating the risk, and they tried to make it as clear as possible so that I would decide to leave. I wanted to keep working. I didn't want to be defeated. They sorted everything out with the Proceso. They took all the necessary security measures and gave me all the psychological support I needed. They took care of everything. The CPJ have given me total and unconditional freedom in my decisions. They were the ones who paid for my tickets to Peru and supported me over 6 months that I stayed there. I had the opportunity to recover thanks to them, because they created a platform for me so I could be okay. They gave me basic supports that I needed. I carried on working. I went with my daughter and we were safe. I got stronger, emotionally, mentally, and professionally. In my case, and for a small group of us, though this is not by no means for everyone, the support of the professional has been crucial. It gives us hope, it gives us strength, it gives us direction. We know if something happens, others will carry on after us. And after what happened to Miroslava, Javier Valdez, and other journalists, we are stronger. And we will carry on with the work. Journalism is unstoppable.
Okay, and finally, Carolina Angristani will read the voice of Ana Paula Oliveira from our chapter on state violence. So as I was saying before, Ana Paula is a founding member of Mais de Manguinhos. This is a group of mothers from the Manguinhos favela in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, who have lost their children to police violence. Ana Paula has since gone on to campaign with Amnesty International and Black Lives Matter in Europe and the US.
Good evening. All my respect for Ana Paula's story and fight. Jonathan was passing Fatima's front door when he got shot, and she saw it happen. It was just 7 months after Fatima's own son was killed by police here in Manguinhos. Her loss was still so recent when she witnessed another young man get shot for no reason. Fatima says Jonathan was passing and her other son was at the door. There were few people around. When she heard the shots, she ran downstairs to grab the children because it was around 4 in the afternoon and they were playing outside. Everyone ran home because it was kicking off between residents and the police. That kind of violence had become the norm since UPP arrived here in Manguinhos. Residents didn't take kindly to their heavy-handed approach and would stand up to them, swear at them, and it always ended up with someone getting shot. Jonathan was the 3rd victim of the UPP in Manguinhos. After him, there were 4 more victims, so there have been 7 so far. In Jonathan's case, we've already spent over 2 years fighting for justice. There was an investigation and they summoned witnesses as soon as the case was passed from the police station to the public prosecutor's office. The court official told me that though she'd been working in Nuñez for a long time, she never seen one of those cases go to court, and she never seen so many witnesses come forward. She summoned 7. Usually, witnesses don't want to get involved because they are afraid. Some of the media were there at the first hearing. It made the news. That's something that encouraged me to keep fighting and still does today. A few days beforehand, a reporter asked me what I expected now that Jonathan's case had made it to court. I said that the least a mother could want when her son had been murdered so cruelly was justice. Then he asked if I knew the name of the policeman, so I gave him the full name. I told him that the weapons had been apprehended at the scene and the ballistics examination confirmed who it was. This was on Friday. Before I left the house for the hearing on Monday, I received messages and links to the interview in the newspaper O Dia. This reporter had managed to find things about this policeman that not even the lawyer on Jonathan's case knew. It turned out that he had already been involved in a triple homicide and 2 attempted homicides in the Baixada Fluminense and had spent a month in prison in 2013. But the case was shelved due to the lack of witnesses. Baixada Fluminense is a dangerous place where there are death squads and militias. It's very hard for a family to pursue justice in that environment. When I found out that the policemen had faced charges before, I was appalled. Why hadn't the courts done their job? It's the questions they ask. I've seen the same thing at other hearings. Does narco-trafficking occur in the favela where you live? Was your son involved in trafficking? This shows their prejudice. The person on trial isn't the policeman, the murderer, but the victim. They spent the whole time trying to justify the killings. The way we see it, there is no justice for us, the poor who live in the favelas. We only see the agents of justice when they come to arrest and punish us. Otherwise, justice is non-existent. People ask me if I believe in justice. If I believe, the policeman will be convicted. I believe in my struggle. In the struggle of the mothers, I will get results. Jonathan's case made it to court thanks to the residents who had the courage to go and testify, and thanks to my efforts with other mothers. That's why. It's not because the justice system is kind. I've always said I never wanted revenge. I want justice. I want Jonathan's case to be an example to the residents so they can believe that if you fight for it, justice will be done. We have to fight. We have to show and understand our rights. I want Jonathan's case to be an example to Nuñez and to so many other mothers. It's all the prejudice, all the racism that is rooted in society, in the whole system, the judiciary, the media. Every time we can talk, we scream and tell a story of pain and struggle. And I'm sure that at least one person will be moved by what we say, when perhaps before they had thought of everyone in the favelas as poor black criminals who deserve to die. When a mother speaks about her struggle, even if this has an impact on just one person, things begin to change. People begin to reflect on their beliefs. That's why I think it's so important for us to speak out. Thank you.
And we did ask Ana Paula to record a video for us tonight, but unfortunately she was unable to. She's going through a somewhat difficult time at the moment, and is unable to put her daughter through school. She's received no compensation from the Brazilian state for what happened to her son whatsoever. So we decided that it might be a nice thing this evening if we had a collection for her. So we're going to pass a box round. If you feel like giving, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome now author and advisor at the Rampal Institute, Richard Bourne, onto the stage. He actually wrote an earlier book on the Amazon entitled Assault on the Amazon. Richard will introduce Lab's other recent publication, which is called Amazon Besieged, and was written by Sue Branford and Mauricio Torres, and it was published in December by Practical Action. Copies are available also at the bookstall just on my right. Sue and Mauricio unfortunately couldn't be with us tonight because they're both currently on assignment in the Amazon.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm not Sue Branford, but I have been a friend of hers for a very long time. This book of mine, published in 1978, includes an acknowledgement for Sue. Can you hear me? Oh, sorry. Includes an acknowledgement for Sue. So it's with really great pleasure that I would like to promote to you the book that she and her colleague Mauricio, this is a better one, okay? I was only allowed 5 minutes, so I hope this doesn't count. But I should share with you, I was in the Rio Earth Summit when I heard Fidel Castro, who was asked, like all the other leaders, to speak for only 5 minutes. And people were taking bets on whether he could achieve that. He did it in 5 minutes precisely, and sat down to a gale of applause. I don't expect that tonight. No, just a few words about this book. It is a very, very good book, which really tells you what's going on, particularly in the sort of Telespiris, the Western Amazon region, where Sue and her colleague carried out a lot of interviews. They were quite across the board. So they were talking to the loggers, they were talking to the people responsible for these very damaging hydroelectric schemes, as well, obviously, for people in the river communities and Amerindians. Now, they were writing before Bolsonaro was elected. And I have to tell you, I was in Sao Paulo the day he was elected, and it was very bad news. Lots of bright young fascists honking their horns, waving Brazil flags, going up and down the street. However, I had also written a book about Lula, as some of you may know, and when he was elected the first time, 100,000 people were in Avenida Paulista. There were perhaps 8,000 Bolsonaristas on the same occasion. So this book is prior to Bolsonaro, but is already saying some pretty bad things. It covers the Temer period, and really the decline of Dilma Rousseff, and the fact that suspensão de segurança, medidas presidenciais, various excuses were being used to override environmental and other protections. Since then, there's been a real bash, as you know, on environmental protection. FUNAI for the Amerindians has been more or less abolished, and the situation is very bad. However, what one should pick from her book, or their book, is some sense of optimism, some sense of resistance, like we've been hearing about, particularly because the Amerindians and the river communities have been joining forces to fight the people pushing for the soy farm, people pushing for the new industrialized railway going up through Amazonia, and the other threats that they face. Obviously, it's a very, very tough battle. The overall situation for deforestation of the Amazon, there was a kind of pause between 2004 and 2014. Since then, things have got worse, and this is a concern not just for people living in the region, but for all of us. All I can say is Sue is wanting to do some more promotional things for this book. There's talk of running something in the House of Commons, where people from the Environment, Human Rights, and other committees will be invited. And I think she anticipates activity in the rest of the country. may I commend to you this evening, if you haven't already had a chance to read it, it's a series of very lively journalistic chapters about different aspects of this siege, as she describes it, of Amazonia. And thank you very much.
Okay, now I'm very pleased to welcome to the stage one of our very special guest speakers, Eliane Brum. So Eliane is a Brazilian journalist, author and documentary filmmaker who has written for El País and The Guardian and is the recipient of more than 40 international awards. She also appears in the introductory chapter to Voices. So. Woo!
Good evening. Sorry for my bad English. I will try to do my best.
This one's the middle one.
I don't know. Okay. I'd like to begin by talking about what the Amazon is. We all talk about the Amazon, the whole world talks about the Amazon. But for many, the forest is just an image, an abstraction, far away. A large tree in the Amazon forest releases 1,000 liters of water into the atmosphere every day, through transpiration. The entire forest releases 20 trillion liters of water every 24 hours. The forest perspires and saves the planet every day. Through its perspiration, the forest literally sends into the sky above our heads a largest river, the aerial rivers that scientist Antonio Nobre speaks of. It's beautiful, as lovely or lovelier than a Walt Whitman poem, a symphony by Beethoven, a painting by Michelangelo. But it's forest that has survived volcanic activity, glaciers, meteors, and continental drift over the past 15 million years, has been threatened by human action over the last 50 years. Right now, the forest may be more threatened than ever because the new president of Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro. Jair Bolsonaro was elected to open the Amazon forest to predatory exploration. This means Bolsonaro has the mission of turning the forest into soybeans, cattle, and iron ore. What is the cycle of destruction of the forest? First come the logging companies, cutting down trees, which will be exported mainly to Europe. There must be a lot of dead forest here in the United Kingdom. After a piece of the forest has been torn down, they bring in cattle to guarantee land ownership. Then they sell the land, and the forest turns into soybeans. This is all illegal, but at some point, these land grabbers, looters of public land, are granted amnesty by the government of the day, and it becomes legal land. Criminals before, now they are called farmers, ranchers, representatives of agribusiness or the nation's productive sector. That's what Lula did in 2009, Michel Temer in 2017. Bolsonaro wants to do more, much more. Today, this criminal assault on the forest and the legalization of subsequent crimes runs into only one roadblock: indigenous land. They're not already encroaching on this land. They are, every day. I live in Altamira, a city on the edge of the Xingu River, And whenever I travel down the Trans-Amazon, a mega highway built by the military dictatorship, I pass logging trucks that have come off indigenous land. Land is increasingly less protected. The land grabbers are able to take the timber, but they can't legalize the land because they run up against the Constitution. Bolsonaro was elected precisely to change this, because profit lies in selling land. It's not enough to raise the forest. It must be possible to sell and exploit it. That's why Bolsonaro has been repeating the same sentence over and over, ever since his campaign. The Indians are human beings like us. And then he explains, the Indians want to be able to lease and sell their lands. In magnanimously conceding that Indians are humans, and his words make it clear he thought they might not be, Bolsonaro is not just being brutal. He pronounces these words to the public, to his followers, and they contain a very clever message. They supposedly give indigenous people the right to turn land into a commodity. Because Indians need to be human beings who transform land into a commodity, so it can be leased or sold to white people. Bolsonaro is supposedly granting indigenous peoples the status of humanity, so they have the same rights as whites. But he himself has issued a warning. Indigenous people do not want to be large landholders. In other words, indigenous peoples cannot be large land-owning human beings. The truth of the matter is, under Brazil's constitution, indigenous people land is public land. Indigenous peoples have the exclusive right to use this land, which means all indigenous people have the right to live on it. But the land isn't theirs for commercial purpose. The land isn't theirs so they can lease or sell it. The land belongs to the country. The land belongs to all Brazilians. Bolsonaro was elected to change this. Most of the land that can't be marketed and sold lies in the Amazon. And Bolsonaro's mission is to boost the supply of marketable land. That's what he's doing when he says he won't demarcate 1 more centimeter of land. That's what he's already doing as he lays the ground for changing the Constitution. What is currently public indigenous land will become land to be exploited by large private groups which produce meat and soybeans for export, and by transnational mining companies. Indigenous public land will become wild people's private land, but not just white people, but not just any white people, as you know. The plan is to do this within the law, by changing the Constitution. If it's possible to do it within the law. If not, we'll see what they do instead. Bolsonarism is a power project that houses an array of internal forces. On some matters, possibly competing forces, as the near future will show. Like every power project, there is a struggle within. At some point, perhaps Bolsonaro himself will become nothing but an ornament, or not even that. But the various groups making up the messianic capitalism now governing Brazil seem to agree on one matter: the future of indigenous people, more specifically, the future of indigenous land. For the ultra-liberals leading the economy, it might be appealing to convert the forest into export commodities in the short run. For the evangelicals who overwhelmingly backed Bolsonaro, the evangelization of indigenous people is great business. For them, a human being like us means being a neo-Pentecostal evangelical. This is how the Amazon forest may be destroyed in a few years. To undermine the resistance of the peoples of the forest and small farmers. Bolsonaro is criminalizing social movements and attacking human rights and NGOs. He is destroying the protection networks of environmental defenders. Even before Bolsonaro, Brazil was the world's #1 killer of land and environmental defenders. We can only imagine what will happen now. This extermination is not just the extermination of rights, it's also the extermination of bodies. Those in the resistance are being shot dead. Since today's Brazil has no room for metaphors, Bolsonaro is arming the population, as evidenced by the decree law he signed this week, expanding the right to bear arms, but not arming everybody, just the people he calls good citizens. I live in one of the most violent cities in the Amazon. The mere possibility that Bolsonaro might win the election had already made things less safe for those who oppose destruction of the forest. Those of us living there felt an immediate change in the behavior of land grabbers and large ranchers and farmers. You can almost touch the violence. During the campaign alone, deforestation grew almost 50% over the previous year. I live not far from Anapu, the town where Dorothy Stang was assassinated in 2005. Even before Bolsonaro took office, the violence in Anapu has grown much worse than in Dorothy Stang's time. From 2015 to 2018, 16 small herders were murdered in Anapu alone. 16 Dorothy Stangs who didn't have American citizenship. And nothing happened. The town knows who's on the list of people marked to die. And nothing is done about it. What will happen in Anapu, a microcosm of the Amazon, when Brazil has a man in power who declared during the campaign that his opponents must be shot? So, to leave things clear, on the one hand, the network that protects the peoples of the forest and environmental defenders is being criminalized and destroyed. And the ownership of guns, a weapon that has always been plentiful in the Amazon, is being expanded. And authorization being given to murders is alleged legitimate defense of alleged property. On the other hand, Bolsonaro has assigned the demarcation of future indigenous lands to the agriculture minister, a leader of the predatory agribusiness sector, a woman known as the Muse of Poison because of the services rendered to the pesticide industry when she was a member of parliament. And the ground is being laid so indigenous land can be leased for agriculture and livestock raising and open to mining. Because, after all, the Indian is a human being like us. This is the assault now underway. Today, the human beings who are the solution are being shot dead by the human beings who are the problem, encouraged by the president of Brazil. 20% of the Amazon's plant cover has been destroyed and the forest is dangerously close to the tipping point. After that, the world's largest tropical forest will become a region of sparse vegetation and limited biodiversity. If the power project embodied by Bolsonaro, and which extends well beyond the president himself, comes to fruition, the Amazon forest will become a savanna, or maybe even a desert. If the world's largest tropical forest is no longer a forest, it's not just Brazil that will suffer, it's the planet. The most important thing I have to say to you today is precisely this. Bolsonaro does not present a threat just to the Brazilians who oppose his power project. He's not just a threat to Brazil. He's a threat to the planet. He's not a threat just to me. He's a threat to all of you here. Last October, the Intergovernmental Panel of Clean Climate Change warned that global warming cannot surpass 1.5 degrees Celsius. Another half degree would multiply the risks of drought, flooding, extreme heat, and poverty for hundreds of millions of people. Not next century, but in the next years. Right now, a caravan of Central American migrants is at the border of Mexico and United States. The top reasons they give for leaving their homes and countries is violence and hunger. But when journalists know how to ask and how to listen, the underlying causes surface. And they'll tell us everything began with drought, lack of water, and change in the climate. What you are witnessing may be the first great Latin American migration prompted by climate crisis. Scientists have also warned that we only have 12 years to hold global warming down to 1.5 degrees. 12 years. And please note, there is a tremendous difference between a worse planet and a hostile planet. I want to assure you that global warming cannot be stopped without the Amazon forest. And unless we stop global warming, it's not our grandchildren who will be condemned to terrible lives. It's our children. Today, resisting the destruction of the Amazon means resisting Bolsonaro's power project. This isn't a task just for Brazil and Brazilians. It's also yours. Not out of solidarity, not out of condescension, not because people here are nice and on the right side of history, but because if the peoples of the forest and the Brazilians who make up their resistance are not giving support, we are all fucked. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eliane. We're very lucky to have with us Pavel Nuñez, one of our voices from both the chapter on new journalism and the student revolution, who will speak and also perform some songs from us. Pavel is one of the frontmen of Café Guancasco, who became known as the Band of the Resistance in Honduras after the coup, the 2009 coup, and he played at protests and in the street. He's a founding member of the resistance movement and a social media activist and educator. Antonia Bouchard-Levine is the author of the Urban Development chapter, and she will be translating.
Buenas noches, gracias. La traductora. Muchas gracias, Emily. Muchas gracias, Louise. Muchas gracias, Pierre, Tom, por incluirme en esta obra tan hermosa, tan bella.
Thank you very much. Good evening, and thank you very much to Emily, to Tom, and to Louise, and for all those who included me in this beautiful piece of work.
Justamente De eso se trata Honduras, de darle voz a un país casi invisible en el mundo.
This is exactly what Honduras is about giving us a voice to such a small country in this world.
Un pequeño país de Centroamérica, muy chiquito, 8 millones de habitantes apenas.
A very small country in Central America, a country of only 8 million inhabitants.
Pero un país cuya historia se puede resumir en los últimos 10 años. En los últimos 10 años podemos resumir toda la historia de este país tan chiquito.
But despite it being such a small country, it has a story that could be summarized and that has really started over the past 10 years. And
Todo
it is-
comenzó...
And it is over the past 10 years that we have begun telling this story.
Todo comenzó el 2009 con un golpe de Estado militar.
Everything began in 2009 with a military coup d'etat.
Un golpe de Estado apoyado, por supuesto, por los Estados Unidos, la cúpula de la Iglesia católica evangélica, empresa privada y demás miembros que conocemos de la extrema derecha.
A coup that was evidently backed by the US government, by the Catholic Church, and of course, some of the corporate entities, as well as you all know, extreme right-wing groups.
Ese pequeñito país en 10 años se convirtió en el país más violento del mundo de países no en guerra.
Over the past 10 years, this country has become one of the most violent countries in not in a state of war.
20 muertos por día.
20 dead per day.
8 masacres en los primeros 15 días del 2019.
8 massacre in the first days of 2019.
Más de 50 personas asesinadas violentamente.
More than 50 people violently murdered.
Alrededor de 60,000 muertos en los últimos 10 años, asesinados violentamente.
Around 60,000 dead in the past few years. 60,000 murdered in a violent way.
10 años de dictadura militar, 10 años de asesinatos a periodistas, de asesinatos a estudiantes, de asesinatos a movimientos sociales.
10 years of murders. 10 years of murders to students. 10 years of murders to social movements.
Y 10 años de mucho terror.
And 10 years of much terror.
8 millones de habitantes con 20 muertos por día.
8 million inhabitants with 20 dead per day.
Ese es Honduras, el pequeño país desconocido en Latinoamérica y en el mundo.
That is Honduras, a very small country, mostly unknown to the world.
Con una fuerte dictadura que está haciendo que todo el mundo se vaya en caravanas de migración para Estados Unidos.
A country so violent that it is forcing everybody out, forcing everybody to migrate out through the migrant caravan.
Es la gran noticia actualmente, las grandes caravanas de hondureños que se van para los Estados Unidos por la violencia y por la pobreza.
That is the major news of the moment. Hondurans leaving Honduras through the migrant caravan due to the violence, due to the political repression.
Caravanas de 5,000 a 10,000 personas que se van a pie por Guatemala, México, hasta llegar a Honduras, hasta Estados Unidos.
A migrant caravan composed of 5,000, 10,000 people that walk their way through Guatemala, through Mexico, all the way to the United States.
Que se enfrentan a militares en Honduras, se enfrentan a militares en Guatemala, se enfrentan a militares en México y se enfrentan a Donald Trump.
These members of the migrant caravan who face the military repression in Honduras, they face the military in Guatemala, and then in Mexico, and then they face Donald Trump.
Es la primera vez de la historia humana en el que se ve un movimiento de migración organizado a manera de marcha popular.
It is the first time in the human history that we see a movement of migration at such a large scale.
La semana pasada partió la segunda caravana.
Last week, the second migrant caravan took off.
10.000 personas, 10.000 mujeres con bebés en sus brazos intentando cruzar la frontera de los Estados Unidos por la violencia y la dictadura en Honduras.
10,000 people, 10,000 women marching their way to get to the United States, fleeing the political repression, fleeing poverty in Honduras.
Todo en ese pequeñito país llamado Honduras.
And all this from this tiny country called Honduras.
Un país que desde hace 10 años está en resistencia y está movilizado en todas las calles.
A country that for the last 10 years has been in resistance and that has been mobilizing itself in every street.
Un país donde hay movilizaciones y protestas cada día desde hace 10 años.
A country where there is protests and demonstrations every single day for the past 10 years.
Y nos reprimen, nos asesinan, nos expulsan de nuestro país.
And they repress us, and they assassinate us, and they expel us from our own country.
Nos amenazan y matan por decir algo.
They kill us, and they threaten us just for saying something.
Por eso estoy aquí, soy un expulsado de mi país.
And this is why I'm here. I have been expelled from my country.
Porque ya no más pensar, ya no más opinar. La libertad de expresión en Honduras, lo dice un periodista, desapareció.
Because just for thinking, just for saying anything, we get repressed. And they call murder, they call periodistas, journalists, yeah, sorry, very sorry. And they call them journalists, disappeared journalists is what they call us.
Y eso es Honduras. Un país que quiero que lleven en el corazón de ahora en adelante.
And this is Honduras. It's a country I want you to take in your hearts from now onwards.
Y que nunca olviden que más allá de las luchas en Sudamérica,
And do not forget that beyond and above the movements and the struggles in Latin America,
existe Centroamérica
exists Central America.
y existe Honduras
And Honduras exists.
y Guatemala, El Salvador, los países más pobres de todo el continente.
Guatemala and El Salvador, the poorest countries on the continent.
Ese es Honduras y
This is Honduras.
quiero mostrar esto.
And I want to show you this.
Dice, fuera Jo.
Fuera Jo, out Jo.
Jo, Juan Orlando Hernández, el dictador hondureño.
Juan Orlando Hernández, the dictator from Honduras.
Una frase poderosa porque se ha convertido en una bandera de lucha de nuestro pueblo.
This is a powerful sentence, a powerful phrase, because it has become our resistance in our country.
En cada partido de fútbol que hay en nuestro país, la gente grita, fuera Jo.
In every football match in our country, everybody yells, fuera Jo.
En cada concierto, la gente grita, fuera Jo.
In every concert, people yell, fuera Jo.
Existen cientos de canciones, aunque ustedes no lo crean, con la frase, fuera Jo.
There are hundreds of songs, even though you may not believe it, that have this phrase, fuera Jo.
Existen libros y toda una gran variedad de expresiones artísticas e intelectuales con esta frase.
There are books and there are all kinds of intellectual forms of expression that have this sentence, fuera Jo.
Y quiero que la recuerden
And I want you to remember it.
porque esta es más que una frase, es un concepto.
Because it's more than a phrase, it's a concept.
Es una bandera de lucha de nuestro pueblo que no se rinde ante toda esa violencia y ante toda esa pobreza.
It's a flag of resistance from our country that will not bend down and will not give up their struggle for the country.
En cada país del mundo donde un hondureño está, existe este rótulo, existe esta frase.
In every country where there is an Honduran, this phrase is present. It exists there too.
Y hoy Londres puede decir,
And today, London can say, fuera Jo.
nunca olviden a nuestro pueblo.
Never forget our country.
Es un pueblo hermoso y que ha sufrido mucho, mucho en estos últimos 10 años.
It's a beautiful country that has suffered so much in these last 10 years.
Gracias por darnos una voz.
Thank you for giving us a voice.
Gracias por volvernos visibles entre tanta invisibilidad.
Thank you for making us visible within so much invisibility.
Gracias por hablar de nuestras luchas.
Thank you for talking about our struggles.
Y gracias por hablar de nuestra resistencia
And thank you for talking about our resistance,
que continúa
which continues,
y a la cual hoy represento.
and which today I represent.
Viva Latinoamérica,
Long live Latin America.
viva Centroamérica,
Long live Central America.
viva Honduras
Long live Honduras.
y vivan todos los pueblos unidos del mundo.
And long live all the united places of the world.
Fuera, jo.
There's going to be just a short break while Pavel gets out his guitar and he's going to perform some of the songs that he played with his band Café Cuancasco in Honduras as the band of the resistance.
Hola. Hola.
Okay. Okay, Pavel Nuñez will now perform for us some songs of Café Cuancasco.
Hay más de 1.000 millones de personas en el mundo que viven al día con $1 y más de 1.000 millones de otros cuantos que por tanto nunca comen suficiente. 3/4 partes del dinero del planeta se lo lleva el 10% de la gente y cada día se preguntan dónde explotará la próxima bomba nuclear. La mayoría de esos pobres en el mundo son mujeres discriminadas y maltratadas. Muchos de sus hijos, de sus hijas, mueren enfermos antes de los 5 años. Allá en Irak mueren por miles, por petróleo, por su raza, por su religión. Y los informes del periódico, la tele y la radio no dicen nada, están comprados desde hace rato. Hay un África al otro lado del continente donde las mujeres se desnutren y se mueren.
junto a 30 millones de niños que se trafican y se venden para salvarle la vida a otros niños. Es el maldito per cápita que ha vuelto locos a Etiopía, Mali, Somalia, Ruanda, Gambia y Libia, donde están las 2/3 partes de hombres y mujeres con VIH-Sida. Es África, es gente, son mujeres muy parecidos a usted, señor y señora miembros de la Providencia, que con sus trajes blancos, joyas, altares y sus grandes coches, cualquiera creería que el paraíso está mirando al norte. ¿Y qué más puedo decirle? Allá existe y ha existido siempre en Latinoamérica, con todas sus historias y su USA of America, los culpables de las heridas de Haití, el Caribe y Centroamérica, sin olvidarse nunca de los azotes a Suramérica. Allá ponen y quitan presidentes, roban los recursos, explotan y hasta matan gente. Embargaron y bloquearon a Cuba, por ejemplo. Mataron a Salvador Allende un 11 de septiembre. ¡Ey! Que no se les olvide esa fecha, porque no son solo torres las que cayeron por esas tierras. También asesinaron y siguen asesinando en Honduras, en Panamá, en Brasil, en Colombia, en Argentina, en Siria, en Palestina. Es USA in gold we trust. Ellos y sus lamebotas que allá tienen nombres de mole, franquicias, abogados, fiscales, empresarios mediocres, váyanse con sus Burger Kings, donde la desdichada madre que los parió a todos. Pachamama está triste, oh no, Pachamama. Pachamama está triste, oh no, Pachamama. Pachamama está triste, a ella le duele que nuestra gente camine sin tocarla. Pachamama tierra, Pachamama vida, nadie se vaya sin mí. Pacha para el sueño, Pacha para el dolor, Pacha para sentir los lamentos del mundo. Hay que levantarnos para conectarnos con todas las piedras y todas las raíces. Hablando de sueños, hoy volé en aviones de humo y le arranqué la piel hasta el fondo del pueblo. Pachamama está triste, oh no, Pachamama. Pachamama está triste, oh no, Pachamama. ¿Cuántos latinos andan aquí, latinas? Vamos a ver esto. Esto no se llama América, se llama Viayala. La multitud de quienes caen del cielo. El sabor del corazón de la montaña. El pulmón izquierdo de la Pachamama. Un continente de conciencias salvajes. 21 historias levantando un fusil. Lo más al sur, lo más al fondo, es Micaela, Juana y Boca Negra. La resistencia regresando al norte. Sangre chicana doblando al español. We are latinos, we from del barrio. Somos Puerto Rico, Cuba, Haití, Dominicana, Guatemala, México, Colombia, Perú, Nicaragua, Bolivia, Panamá y Costa Rica, Venezuela, Uruguay, Brasil y El Salvador, Chile, está triste. Fuera jo, y Honduras, fuera jo. Ustedes digan fuera jo. Y Honduras. Ah, ya están con hambre. Está triste. Y Honduras será libre. Aguanta una más. Sí. Una más. Una más. Algo dedicado al amor, pero así como medio revolucionario. El amor está en la esquina, al ladito de cualquier y sentadito en una silla junto a miles de neuronas de cabeza que bombean la saliva para que el corazón no muera. El amor está en el jardín de los jereces, discutiendo con el odio y dramatizando a Shakespeare, agarrado de las manos como un ruiseñor, dibujándole un poema, la clave de lo. El amor está en tu boca, desesperado en una cuerda floja y medio rota, sin papeles, al borde de un accidente, para llegar al otro lado por los labios que te besé. Bienvenidos ciudadanos del mundo de la calle, a esta tierra que nace con el sol. Bienvenidos cirujanos y escultoras del planeta, todo crece y se respeta, porque aquí vive el amor. A ver, pongámosle palmas a eso. Palmas, 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 palmas. ¡Hey! 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 Bien. Por arriba y por abajo, por encima de un papel hasta que un hoyo no se pare. Allá por el barrio donde se nace, en un pueblito chiquitito donde el ombligo se deshace. En la escuela, en el cine, en el pantanal, en el mercado de la cuadra, en el parque central. El amor está en París y en las noches con estrellas, en el día del amor y en los finales de novelas. El amor está en los 365 puntos cardinales de la tierra. El amor está en sus bocas. Disculpe que lo diga otra vez, pero el amor está en sus bocas. ¿Qué quieren? ¿Que lo diga más fuerte? Bueno, el amor está en sus bocas. Bienvenidos ciudadanos del mundo de la calle, a esta tierra que nace con el sol. Bienvenidos cirujanos y escultoras del planeta, todo crece y se respeta, porque aquí vive el amor. Palmas otra vez. ¿No hablan español aquí o qué? Pa, pa, pa. Ojo, pero también el amor está allá en el monte, donde sobran las jornadas y hacen falta los frijoles. En cada una de las mujeres que a diario se lastiman, en las que viven como esclavas y trabajan todo el día. El amor está en el guerrillero, que abandona su futuro y lo regala a todo un pueblo, en las madres que lloraron por 3 décadas la desaparición de sus hijos y el olvido de una era, en los niños que nos parecen delincuentes porque respiran resistol y se amontonan entre la gente. El amor, Londres, el amor está en los pobres, en la gente que aún duerme, en el futuro que ya viene y en los momentos como este, que nunca vuelven. Bienvenidos ciudadanos del mundo de la calle, a esta tierra que nace con el sol. Bienvenidos cirujanos y escultoras del planeta, todo crece y se respeta, porque aquí vive el amor. ¡Epa! Gracias, gracias en nombre de mi pueblo. Gracias en nombre del pueblo de Honduras. Gracias en nombre de Latinoamérica. Nos vamos a despedir así. Bienvenidos ciudadanos del mundo de la calle a esta tierra que nace con el sol. Bienvenidos cirujanos y escultoras del planeta. Todo crece y se respeta porque aquí vive el amor. Y última de palmas y nos vamos. Vamos. Bienvenidos ciudadanos del mundo de la calle a esta tierra que nace con el sol. ¡Vamos! Bienvenidos cirujanos y escultoras del planeta. Todo crece y se respeta porque aquí vive el amor. Fuera Vox. Fuera Bolsonaro. Fuera Macri. Fuera dictadores de Latinoamérica. Fuera Trump. Thank you very much.
Pavel. Thank you so much to Pavel. And now some other thanks are in order. Fuera Vox. But I'm really overwhelmed by the incredible support we've had for the book and also for this event. So thank you so much for coming and supporting the book and being here with us tonight. I know we've had a huge amount of support from everyone who's made the book happen, whether you've crowdfunded, translated things, you've photographed things, you've done interviews for us. But there's also some other donors that I'd like to mention. I'd like to quickly thank the estate of David Slater and Christian Aid, the Lippmann Miliband Trust, and to our 3 very generous anonymous donors who twice provided match funding so that the book could be completed and also printed with full colour photography, which you can now enjoy. Lastly, and most importantly, I'd like to thank our impressive and very inspiring voices, without whom this book would not be possible. And books are still available from the stall if you'd like to buy them. There's also delicious Peruvian food over there from Hungry Llama. And we now have music from DJ La Vecina, followed by DJ Kika. So please enjoy Dream to Love.